welcome, and you're extremely fortunate to be able to encounter the work of Steve James. Before we get started, we've got quite a lot of clips to get through. I'd just like to tell you two reasons why I think you're so fortunate to be here. Because it must be clear by now that I'm sitting here not as a skeptic or as a sarcastic member of the British, ironical member of the British media classes, but as a pure enthusiast. So you have to spool back to, I don't know whether it's 94 or 95, but I've just arrived in a rather ramshackle building now demolished in West London, which is called the BBC's documentary department, full of people busy stabbing each other in the back or in the front too, and full of loathing of such a pitch I'd never encountered. And I managed to have lunch with some guy when I worked at Channel 4, I knew a bit, who was working at HBO, and he says, "You've got to see this film called Hoop Dreams." And I said, "Well, fine, send it to me." So this VHS arrives, and I noticed, how long was the VHS now?
Well,
three and a half hours?
It might have arrived on 2 VHSs. It was...
Two VHS?
It was a 3-hour film. So.
3 hours. So anyway, what happened is I put it in the machine, and the VHS, it was a very, very poor quality, so I got through 5 minutes of it, and I put it to one side. I thought, this is a bit long for the BBC. So then I get a call from the guy, no emails in those days, and he says, did you watch film? And I said, well, not yet. And he said, well, be sure to watch it, and remember that when you get to minute 16, they get a new camera. So I put it in again, and sure enough, the picture quality, even through the fuzz, changes rather remarkably after minute 16. But then I just sit watching it, and I'm there 3 hours later, way into the evening, actually, in this rather bizarre dead-end office at the BBC. And I think very rapidly I figured out why I'd come to the BBC to concern myself with the new documentaries that were just starting up. This is documentaries that could be shown in cinemas, could be shown on television, but far more important than that, documentaries that privilege narrative, privilege stories, and actually could be watched in the same sense of wonder or delight that you would see the best fiction films, or more importantly, in my terms, more importantly, the very best journalists or the very best novels. This is a wonderful hybrid form that exists to tell us great things about the world. So that's point number one. Point number two about Steve is that you'll see that Steve is quite spectacularly good looking. And he's good looking to me in a very special way, because if you grew up watching Hollywood films, you notice some resemblance to James Stewart. Except that James Stewart, notoriously, apart from being a bomber pilot, it was a Republican, right?
Probably.
Steve, I imagine, as a bomber pilot, he's flying a super fortress over American reality. That's his job, to fly huge and heavy machines with grace through the air. And yes, he's as good looking as James Stewart, but what he does in an uncanny way, I think, for me, is to represent what is really great about American documentaries, and that is they represent the extreme empiricism of American life. It still endures. Americans are obsessed with metaphors thanks to Hollywood, but there's a sort of counter-tradition that if you want to know about something, you have to look at it so hard that you'll be exhausted. You'll have exhausted the subject, but people will understand what you're talking about. And I think this tradition has been much abused and led to many dull documentaries, but none of Steve's documentaries are in the least dull, and they have this quality. You know what he's talking about. You know these people. You know these people as well as if that you had encountered them. They're not quite family of yours because they're not family of his, but the knowledge is very valuable. So you come back to these films, as I do, again and again and again, with the memory of having not just learnt about something, that's banal, but known something, known people. And that, I think, is what his art, for that's what it is, really gives you. Okay, Steve.
I think we should just stop right there. Thank you. Well, I want to say something about Nick. No, I just want to say one thing. First of all, the other night when I saw him, I said, I'm going to just be your straight man, and it's working out so far.
Yeah.
you know, the first time I talked to Nick was after he'd seen Hoop Dreams, and he called up and he was very excited about the film and wanted it for the BBC, which was fantastic. But beyond that, then with the next film I did, which we'll talk about at some point, Stevie, he was the first person to give us any money for that, and one of the last people to give us money until it was well underway and at risk of never even being finished. So he made an early commitment, and then on the New Americans, this miniseries. So he's been, and on this new film, The Interrupter. So it's been a great partnership with Nick and the BBC in Storyville, and so I'm just really grateful that we're doing this together. So
that's very, very kind of you. Now we're going to see a clip now, aren't we?
Yes.
So talk us into the next clip. Explain. How many of you have seen Hoop Dreams? Well, there you go. That's, and,
yes. As we go forward, we won't do that hand count, okay?
Yeah, no, sure. Well, it would be worth knowing how many people have seen The Interrupters, though.
Yeah, okay.
How many people have seen The Interrupters?
Okay, pretty good.
That's pretty good, yeah.
Pretty good.
Okay.
Well, so with Hoop Dreams, I mean, most of you know what the film's about. We followed these kids for 4.5 years, starting before high school, and we actually filmed a little bit into college, but very little of that is in the movie. But, you know, it was this grand adventure. He talked about novels. For us, I think, being in the film, or making the film, it felt like we were in a Dickens novel, you know, because the fortunes of these guys were rising and falling so unexpectedly that it was a very exciting and thrilling kind of ride to be on. And the reason I picked this clip, the clip we're going to show is late in the film when it's Arthur's 18th birthday, and for me this is a scene. You know, we've been filming at this point for, you know, over 3 years with this family, and they have been through a lot. The father, if you either don't remember or haven't seen the film, the father who was there at the beginning of the film and involved in the family had left the family for a while and been running the streets and developed a drug problem, and the family had gone on welfare for a while. They had never been on welfare. They had their power turned off. I mean, you saw this as the film unfolded. And so we finally get to their 18th birthday, relatively late in the movie. And this is a very special scene for me. Maybe we can talk about it after we watch it.
I'm fixing him a birthday dinner today. It's his 18th birthday, and I want to show him how much we appreciate him and love him and care for him. Everything that you can imagine is going wrong with this family, but now everybody's together. It's his favorite cake. He's a great kid. And some kids don't even live to get this age, you know? That's another thing to be proud about. That, you know, this is his 18th birthday, he lived, and to get to see 18, that's good.
I want to tell you that I love you very much. I'm very proud of you. It seemed like I was 18 just yesterday. Here, happy birthday. I love you.
Hey, hey. Happy birthday. I love you too.
Come on, here. Let's go. Happy birthday, dear. Happy birthday to you.
How many more?
2 months after his 18th birthday, Arthur is cut off public aid.
This is what I brought to their attention. He's still a full-time student. He haven't graduated yet. So why would you all cut him off? They feel like when they get 18, most of black kids, they drop out. So that means that the child is just thrown out there. I was getting $368, now I get $268. And that's it. And this to take care of me from 1 month to the next. Now, can you imagine a person living on that? Do you all wonder sometimes, how am I living? Or how do my children survive? Or how they living? It's enough to make people really want to go out there and just lash out and hurt somebody.
A message to the Oreo cookie. No matter how much you want to switch, here's what they think about you.
Fried chicken and biscuit eating, monkey ate baboon, big guy, fast running, high jumping, spear chucking, 360-degree basketball dunking, titsoon, spade, mulling yarn. Go the fuck back to Africa. Go the fuck back to Africa. Go the fuck back to Africa.
Think about it, fucking sellout.
Motherfucker, put the music on.
Damn! Turn it to the radio. Listen for a minute. Yo, G, stick a fucking tape in.
Tell us a bit first. How did you find? Not just how did you find these teenagers, but how did you get to make this remarkable film?
Well, we started out to make a much different film. It was going to be a half-hour long. We were going to shoot it on film, so you wouldn't have that problem with the camera for the first 16 minutes. And we were going to focus on a single playground and hopefully find kids like Arthur and William who were dreamers, and maybe other players who were there that had come through this and never made it but still were back at the playground, washed up players, if you will, and maybe a pro player that came off of that. That was the original idea. But then when we went out, we tried to raise money for a while. We failed to raise anything, but finally I got like a $2,000 Illinois Arts Council fellowship, So we just said, screw it, we're just going to go out and start shooting something because we're never going to get money for this. So we went out and we were looking at courts with this guy, Big Earl Smith, who appears in the beginning of the movie and later in the movie. And Earl, while we were looking for the court to focus on, he saw Arthur for the first time as this raw, kid, and he just said, I think that kid's got ability. I'm like, which one? I mean, I couldn't tell which guy. I mean, I played basketball, and I was like, who, him? He saw something, and he said, I want to take him and recruit him out to this school in Westchester, powerhouse basketball team, St. Joseph's. I had met the coach coincidentally because we were trying to get to Isaiah Thomas, who was the greatest player to come out of the school. So it was like fate smiled on us. So we just said, well, this is really interesting. Instead of focusing on this playground court, maybe we should see what happens with this kid when he takes him out to St. Joe's. The coach will let us come in. He knows us, And when we went there and filmed, this is all in the film, and he sits with Arthur and his family. He says, if you come in and work hard at the grades and work hard at basketball, in 4 years I'll help you go to college. I thought, what an extraordinary thing to promise a kid like this. And the fact that he was going out to this suburban place, when we were on the way out there, in the early scene in the car, he says, well, it's exciting to him because you can look at all the scenery as we're riding by suburban homes, as if he was at the Grand Canyon or something. And so we just thought this is a more interesting story than just staying on the court.
So there were three of you involved in making the film, but what stage were you in your careers, and how did you get the idea just to go on filming? Was it because no one would give you a contract for the documentary?
That was part of it. Our joke, but it wasn't really a joke, was we kept filming because we were waiting for somebody to give us money.
Yeah.
Because my partner's on it, Frederick Marks, who I went to grad school with, that's how we met, and Peter Gilbert, who I met in the course of looking for someone who had a camera.
Yeah.
And who also loved this topic. That's how, and at that time, it's different than now. Now you can have a really good camera for very little money. And you can make a film if, maybe someone won't give you money, but you could make a film very much more easily now than you could then. You had to have access back then. And so Peter had a camera. And so we just kind of went out and did it. Peter had some experience because Peter had worked with Barbara Koppel. He had shot a good bit of American Dream for free for her. And so he seemed like the perfect guy and he loved basketball. He was a huge basketball fan. So in terms of where I was at with my career, I had no career at that point. I was working I was the most educated production assistant in Chicago.
Right.
I had a master's in film production, and I was working on TV commercials as a production assistant, doing things like sweeping up the set and going through 16 boxes of cornflakes to pull out the best flakes for the bowl. And And I had somebody tell me on a commercial, it was the point in time where I almost left Chicago and just gave it up, but if it wasn't for Hoop Dreams, I would have. A person who was like 23, I used to lie about my age. I said I was 27 when I was really 30. And people go, really, you're 27? You know? But, you know, they complimented me on keeping the set clean and said I was really great because they didn't have to ask me to pick up the trash. I just did it.
So how do you get to figure out that you have a film like this, particularly a film of this length? I mean, what's the process by which you understand the scale of the story you have?
Well, you know, it just kind of gradually happened, Nick. It was not, at first it was going to be literally a short film because I thought I was thinking very practically, you know. But then as it evolved, it was like, well, Peter's got a camera, he's into it. All we have to do is pay for tape stock. I've got this other work I do, which I could go and do for 2 weeks and then get off, you know. And so, but, you know, if you look at the film, freshman and sophomore year in the film happen in the first 40 minutes. And I'm sure some people watch it and go, oh, this isn't so bad, you know. Yeah. It's half over. But it's not half over. There's still 2 hours and 10 minutes to go.
I'm interested in the families, too. Let's say you shout the families or the two boys, to Arthur and William. And do they ask you, well, what is this film you're making?
Well, at first,
how does that work?
Well, what happened is that fairly early on we said to them, look, we don't have any money, but what we'd love to do is check in with you over time. We kind of, after that meeting, it was the first week of filming, it was like, wouldn't it be great if we could be around in 4 years and see what happens to this kid? Yeah. We didn't know if we could do it because we had no money, but I at least talked to them about it and said, you know, this would be, and my thinking was we'll check in once a month with them or something. I had no idea what we'd do. And so, I mean, if we had gone in at that time and said to them, look, if we had a crystal ball and said, look, we're going to be here for the next 4.5 years. By the end of this, we're going to have shot about 180 to 200 days.
How many hours do you reckon?
Over 250.
Okay.
At that time, it seemed like a lot. Nowadays, it's not a lot. But, you know, if we had said that to them, they would have said, forget it. You know, they would have said, you're crazy. And they did think we were crazy. But
they did think you were crazy.
Yeah, at certain points along the way. I mean, they were like, they'll film anything. I mean, you know. Yes. And then they would do impersonations of me saying, hold on. Well, don't say anything. We want to get this, you know.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to talk about money the whole time, but just in this first film, like, at what point and how does the money start to come in? And I guess the other question is, how cheap or how expensive was
the film?
Yeah.
The first real grant we got was from Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We got it about 2 years in.
Not the local TV station?
No. We approached the local public television station, and they said we could.
They said we have no money.
Well, they said, I was just trying to get a meeting with them, and they said, we're really busy right now. Could you call back in 4 months?
Oh, God.
So we didn't call back. We ended up with a public station out of Minneapolis because they saw a demo that we had put together and liked it, and they engineered. We had applied to CPB. When we applied to CPB the first time without the public station, the guy looked at our demo, and, you know, it was early in the project, but this is an honest-to-God conversation I had with him. Because you have to understand, at this time, sports films were not, documentaries on sports were like, nobody thought it was serious, you know. So the guy looked at it and he said, yeah, you know, this was a highly placed guy at CPB, Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And he said, yeah, I looked at it, I looked through the proposal. He goes, you know, I mean, it's about, you know, wanting to play basketball, you know. And he said, you know, if one of the guys like maybe started using drugs or got killed, then I think you got a story.
Yeah. But just so you know, CPB, I'm not going to try to explain to you the structure of PBS because it makes the BBC seem very simple indeed.
But
CPB's down in Washington, isn't it?
Yes, but then in a sense, over the years, I've gotten tremendous support from public television, particularly ITBS. But at that time, it was very
San Francisco.
Yes,
and that's an extra funding thing
that independence made happen. So
because PBS aka the American version of the BBC, was so incompetent that they had to create an extra thing called ITVS, right, to satisfy independence, which is very good, by the way. Anyway.
Yeah. But eventually, so we got 70,000 from CPB 2 years in, and then we didn't really get serious money until MacArthur stepped in 3 years in with 250,000, and that really made it possible to finish film. Altogether, we raised about 450,000 by the time it was over.
So, which is, even in those days, would be considered a small amount of money.
Yeah.
And in the end, did you get any money back? I mean, did it make money for you?
Oh my God, yeah, it's the only film I've ever done that really made money. I mean, it was totally unexpected, of course. Yeah. It was theatrically. When I met with the MacArthur Foundation guy, he said, "Tell me something. Would this film ever play in theaters?" And I said, "Oh God, no." Because at that time they didn't. And I said, "We shot it. It's on video, and the only documentaries that play in theaters, if any at all, are all shot on film." And that's what I told him. I said, "I was way too honest, Nick."
And that's a mistake.
And he went with it anyway. He loved it, and he engineered it to get a grant, and it did. It went to Sundance, and it ended up playing theatrically and doing quite well. And we were able to give the families quite a bit of money for a documentary, and it would end up being a sort of fairy tale.
It was criticized to some degree. There were two lines of criticism. Firstly, that it had insufficient social content, that it failed to examine the way in which teenagers were manipulated by the sports industry. And then you were criticized, I don't agree with either of these criticisms, but I'm mentioning them, because you were a lot of white boys making film about blacks. There was a certain amount of that, wasn't there?
Yeah. No, definitely. And, and I think that's always a reasonable question.
Yeah.
I think the only way filmmakers should venture, I mean, first of all, just about 95% of documentary filmmakers make films about people that aren't of their community at all. I mean, but when it's white, black in America, and it's middle class and poor, it becomes particularly acute criticism. And I think the only way you do that is for me, it's you have to be willing to go in and learn. You're there to learn. You have to spend the time there to try and understand. And I have this fantasy. Maybe you would fund this. I have a fantasy for a series that would be, and I'm not going to benefit from this. So this is a purely altruistic thing. How about a series of films made by filmmakers of color where they venture into white communities?
Yeah,
wouldn't that be good?
It's a very good idea, yeah. It's a good idea. Good. I think we've got to get through some, reluctantly, because I could talk about Hoop Dreams for hours, we've got to go on to the next one. Stevie, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to just see that or talk again?
Well, I should just set it up to say that it's it wasn't, if from a career standpoint, as a decision to do this film, it wasn't exactly a smart career move. At least.
I think that's an understatement, Steve.
I mean, this film was, despite Hoop Dreams' success, this was a film that was virtually impossible to raise any money for, besides people like Nick. And it too was made on a shoestring, and because of what it was about. And it started out to be another short film. A portrait of a kid that I had been a big brother to. Big brother programs in the States, you probably have similar things here, mentoring. My wife had gotten me to volunteer when I was in grad school, and they gave me the hardest kid they had because my wife worked with children at risk, as they used to call them. And so I got this kid named Stevie Fielding, who I was a big brother to. And when I first met him, you learn this in the film, just setting up this sequence. But in the film, when I first met him, he was in a behavioral disorder class surrounded by filing cabinets. The teacher had surrounded him so he couldn't have eye contact with anybody in the room because he was so disruptive. And he had a little bellhop bell that he would ring if he wanted the teacher's attention because she couldn't see him either. So that was my first meeting with my new little brother, and And as I got to know him, I found out very quickly that he was living with his grandmother 50 yards away from his real mother, who had, when she had had him illegitimately, so when she got married, she didn't want him. She worried that it would undermine her marriage. So for some reason, she gave him to her new mother-in-law to raise. Well, the mother-in-law really took him in because he was being beaten as a child, and she just felt so sorry for him, she took him in. So he grew up next to his real mother, and when I was his big brother, we'd go down and visit with him. So this is a film that when I would tell people I was doing a new documentary, they go, "Oh, what's it about? What's it about?" And then when I would tell them what it was about, they would go, "Oh." So this is early in the film, after I'd gone down to start what I thought was just going to be a portrait of him 10 years later. This is 10 years after I'd left Southern Illinois, after Hoop Dreams. I had this idea I would do a portrait of where he is now. You know, he's 24 years old when I left, after being his big brother for almost 3 years. He was 14, and I thought it would just be an interesting little portrait where I'd look back on who he was then and see who he was now. But then something very dramatic happened, which is this part.
I called Stevie last night, or tried to. I got Grandma instead. She said Stevie was in jail. He'd been arrested a few days ago and charged with sexually molesting his 8-year-old cousin. Grandma was quick to say Stevie had been framed and his so-called mother was behind it. He gave a written confession to the police, but he told me he'd been manipulated and he planned to plead innocent.
Stephen is charged with 3 counts, 3 felony charges. The first count is predatory criminal sexual assault of a child, which is a Class X felony, which is the most serious class of felony.
This is one thing that I never would have thought of that would have happened. Never. It blows my mind. It just...
You've told me that your mom is the one that encouraged your aunt to press charges against you.
She's always told me whenever I've been in trouble, she said, "You're going to go to prison. You're going to go to prison. You're going to go to prison." It's just like whenever I was a little kid, there's one word I hate the most. It's your fault. It's your fault. That's all she ever told me.
And yet, I learned Mom makes regular trips to see Stevie.
Figure out why she's so consistently coming up here.
She can't say she loves me, because if she did, why did she put me through all the hell that she put me through? That's what I want to know. Why? Why did she come back 26 years later and wants to be a mother? To me, it's done too late. She should have thought about that years ago.
I've left several messages for Stevie's mom, Bernice, but she never calls back. So I try visiting her instead. Looking around at her neat, homey place, it's hard to imagine her as the monster she's painted to be by Stevie and Verna. I want to know why she does go see Stevie in jail, and whether she feels responsible for all that's happened.
He wasn't Mirandized. He wasn't told that his statement could be used against him. We have to somehow get his, I should say, alleged confession, get it suppressed through pretrial motions, or we have to deal with it at trial.
I was teaching her about things that happens in life. I touched her at the top, chest, and at the bottom, Virginia. I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. I need help and I will get help. I'm sorry for what happened. I made the statement on my own. Stephen Fielding.
The image I have of Stevie is being out in that vacant lot next to our house, dressed up in the Cheshire Cat outfit with the hose. Just very solitary, not involved with other people a whole lot. He grew up abused and neglected. That's kind of the MO for somebody who molests kids.
You've got to look at it really cold, because if you start looking at the human individuals and, well, yeah, he's really not that bad of a guy. Well, why don't you look at the victim? You know, the victim wasn't that bad of a person either. I mean, you've given him chances in the past, and now he's gotten himself in a load of trouble, and you give him another chance?
It's a really good film. It is a very difficult film because you could hardly have chosen a more upsetting subject or a more upsetting person to make a film about. But how did people respond to it? Did they get into the film, or did they just say, well, it's going places we don't want to know about?
Well, you know, I knew that this would be a divisive film partly because once he was charged with this crime, there were certainly people who felt, and I wrestled with this myself, so I couldn't begrudge other people for feeling this way at all.
Yeah.
That maybe I should stop making the film. You know, if I really want to be his big brother or act in that way, I should not make the film. And obviously I did make the film, and it was one of the reasons why I felt it was important that my actions be in the film as well. I didn't start out actually to be in the movie. I figured I would narrate it, but not be in it. But it felt like if I was going to make the film, I had to make it honestly. And I don't come off really sympathetically in this movie, I don't think. I mean,
in what way you?
Well, I think you see. I mean, I think the film raises questions about my ineffectiveness as a big brother, both in the present, in the film present, not now. And in the past.
That might have been a reason why. Well, it's the reason I like the film because none of us is perfect, and it takes a certain amount of courage to depict yourself in that way in a film anyway. But did people respond?
Some people responded to that, and then I also raised questions in the film at different points. You may remember, Nick, about this sort of ethics of making the film, about whether I should even be making the film. And I think for the people who didn't like the film, they felt like they were angry at me, and they could see me in the film, so then they could say, I'm really angry at that guy. They were angry at me for making the film. They just felt like it was unethical for me to make it. There was also a large strain of people that just didn't want to see a film about a guy like that.
Yeah.
And no one ever said that the film was an apology for Stephen. It's not. But the people, the sort of most acute,
Do you find that people have a block when it comes to eliciting sympathy towards human beings who are not given any sympathy?
Well, yeah, but I think the people that did like the film, and I want to add that at least critically and in terms of at festivals and stuff, a lot of people liked the film, and what they liked about it was that it was so honest, and that they would say that at the end of the film, when he's going off to prison, and he gives his mother a hug, that they really feel for both of them, even though they've both done terrible things, but they don't feel like they've been asked to forgive his actions, in some way. And so it's a film that started out to be a portrait of a kid that had been through a difficult life, and it ended up being, for me, that, but also a film that tries to help an audience understand how people become Stevie. And I think to that degree it really succeeded. I think the thing that I hoped is that people might be angry at me, but get past me to see the portrait that was there of this family and this community and this kid. And people did, but not everybody did. But the film, the film wasn't a popular success like Hoop Dreams, but it did its share of did well in the festival circuit and got a theatrical release and all of that. And to this day, I get more emails from people out of the blue about Stevie than any other film.
Right.
Because people see it, they find it somehow, and they've known difficult people in their lives. They've known people who have done what he's done, or they've struggled with people that were in their lives that have committed bad, crimes or whatever, and that's the part that connects with them.
Well, we're into very difficult territory now when you're going to audiences and you're going to backers and you're saying, not just I'm in this. I think it's fine you're being a film. I like that, but you're saying this is I've chosen a very difficult line of subject matter. It is impossible to depict Stevie as a wholly pleasurable film.
No. No, and I think that's why it was so hard to get any money for the film until eventually a private investor, a guy who made his money in home security systems but always loved film, and he wanted to get into the film business, and he chose Stevie to invest in. and
he lost his money, I guess.
No, he didn't. He actually didn't make money, but he got his money back. But he got he just was really moved by and touched by the story of, and he actually is a successful film producer who's directing his own first film now. He produced The Station Agent.
Oh, great film. Anyone see that?
And the year we were at Sundance with Stevie, The Station Agent was there, and he was king of Sundance. He had a documentary in the competition, and he had The Station Agent, which was the hit of Sundance. So.
Okay, go on the next step. But a last question would be: you lived in relatively modest circumstances making this film, because it took an awful long time to make, and kind of been very lavishly funded.
No, it wasn't lavishly funded. I put my own money into it for a good while in order to do it. And here's the funny thing, Nick: we shot this on film. Because I was going to just do a little portrait, and I was feeling, my oats after Hoop Dreams, and I thought we can do a little film, and I want to shoot it on film. So we kept shooting it on film. We shot it on Super 16. So that was the craziest thing in the world, but I'm glad we shot it on film. But the thing about Stevie, this film, I'm as proud of this film, even though I had my own questions about whether I should have made it or not. I've seen the impact it's had. I've seen the way it's been used in social service settings. My wife works with sex offenders. When she first went to this facility she works at now, they were showing this film. They had to stop showing it because she started to work there. But it's a film that is, in its own way, has had a life out there, and it's done a lot of good, I think. But it's also the most honest film I've ever made, and the most difficult film. But I don't think I'll ever make a film more honest than Stevie.
Well, should we have a quick look at The New Americans?
Yes.
Then we get on to The Interrupters. So next, please.
So we should set this up. But
okay, you said that.
The New Americans is a mini-series we did that Nick was also supportive of in a big way. This was something that people that liked Hoop Dreams could get behind, and so we had more luck getting startup funds for this film, including CPB. They were on board now. So the idea with this series was that we wanted to follow immigrants from different cultures, different countries over a period of years. We wanted to start with them in their home countries and see them come to America and see what happens to them. And I'd seen films on immigrants, but most of the ones I'd seen had picked up people when they were in America and then followed their lives. And we really wanted to start at the beginning. And so we recruited this great team of filmmakers to do it with us, and we had 5 stories. We did a Palestinian woman who met a first-generation Palestinian American, fell in love with him, and came to America. We did an Indian computer programmer from Bangalore who wanted to be in Silicon Valley, and he came during the boom, and then it went bust during the course of our filming. The Palestinian story also straddled 9/11, so that had an impact on that story. We did 2 Dominican baseball prospects who in the Dodger organization, which was a very funny story, also had its share of heartbreak, though. And then we did a Mexican family, a meat packer in Kansas, who wanted to bring his family from Mexico legally. He'd come there illegally years earlier. And then the last story, which I was an executive producer, this is my brainchild, and I was an editor of the series too. But the last story is the one I did, which will show a little sequence from. It was a Nigerian refugee families coming to Chicago, and this family, this one couple, Israel Ngozi, he had been trained as a chemical engineer in Nigeria, but he worked a series of very low-wage jobs in the States, and we see that. We started with them in a refugee camp. But this is later in the film, and now Ngozi, his wife, is about to have, they're pregnant with what is going to be their first child in America. At the same time, so you know, the second part of this scene goes back to Nigeria because the other Nigerian family we're following Ken Saro-Wiwa, which was the activist who caused them to become refugees to begin with, was going to be buried properly now. Anyway, they weren't able to afford to go back to Nigeria, so they wanted to send them some kind of video of their life in America, and that's the second part of this. So.
Ngozi and Israel wanted to go back to Nigeria for Ken Saro-Wiwa's funeral, but they could not afford it, especially now. It's a baby shower, courtesy of Ngozi's fellow maids.
How much we love you. We are like a family here.
Michigan. This is a big surprise. This is my first experience to receive such gift. Thank you very much. I appreciate everything. Thank you. You are welcome.
Since they can't be there, Israel and Ngozi sent a video letter home to their families in Bane. It's been 4 years since they left. The family borrows a television for the occasion.
Is that if you are possible, she would have come out of the television so she can.
Hey, look, we were Leila.
Yeah, we're talking about the situation at home now. Mama, where can you wait for one name?
Hey, Yakuru Yodo, Bonesi, we could now. I
was on the Mark and you make it never suit because what's me did in your mind.
I can know I don't pay. That's so in a get here to make I don't work out all in a meet.
Mommy, I greet you because I miss you. Apple.
She don't be good. They don't speak like Black American. It will be easy for them to teach her the language.
Then, takre ejeshi pepper soup ma nwanyi monwa.
Onye ga-agwa Chineke naanị onye ga-agwa. Chineke onye na-egburu m mgbe onye na-asa m ekpere. Ọ dị mma.
I miss you.
So to do I want a day and doubt to is in Oto be a woman.
If I know how can I tell but I'm getting yours, Nimoji Boga Gebaho. I need to go again, but again, I'm okay. Nah, Ziggy.
Pray for us. It's really damn tough here. It's not like home. Bringing a kid in this country, bringing a kid in this country. By the grace of God, everything works out fine.
That is a stunning sequence. I guess we ought to talk. I'm a little worried about time. Do we have any? If we go over a bit, does it matter, anyone? We're not. Sorry, any organisers? Does it matter if I go over a bit of time? No. Okay. Okay. This is really a beautiful sequence. It's really beautiful. Okay, it's about real life, but the characters come out at you, and they're all very sympathetic, and it sort of moves from one piece of the world to another effortlessly and packs such a huge amount in a short time. I mean, when you're filming people, how much do you arrange? How much do you shape scenes in your mind when you're recording them?
You mean during the filming?
Yeah.
I don't think I do that much at all. I really feel like I'm not that creative in that regard. You know what I mean? It's like I really feel like I'm always, the best moments are the ones that surprise you,
Yeah.
right? That you're not expecting.
So you worked as an editor?
Yeah, and I edited that. But so to me, that happens more after the fact. Okay. But I think you have to be alive to what's happening in the scene and make sure you get the pieces so I think a lot of it is, it's really sort of seeing what's happening. And I see films from time to time where I feel like the filmmaker is sort of forcing it to be what they envisioned from the beginning, and they really make the film fit that instead of...
That's what I was trying to say at the beginning. That's your film's the antithesis of that. You never feel the plot is created by the filmmaker and imposed on the people. The plots, the stories arise out of what the people in front of you are doing. I mean, they construct their plot. So in a way, your films seem quite artless, except that a sequence like that, when you start to look at all the ingredients, is very, very highly wrought, very structured, very cleverly put together, Nick.
Well, if you say so.
Well, what do you think?
Well, you know, I think one of the things that was exciting about that moment was it was this interesting, you know, when we start, for me, this scene really sort of captures what we set out to want to do, but we could have never imagined it happening like this, which was the whole idea with starting with people before they become immigrants in America was to really get a sense of who they were there and what they were leaving behind. And so that when you come to America in the film with them, I want you to be looking at America through their eyes, not your eyes.
Yeah.
And so I think we succeeded in doing that. This scene is about that. It's about, you know, we're kind of through video, we're going back home with Ngozi and Israel, and they're sharing, and you're seeing what they've left behind and what they've lost and what they miss and what the people back home miss as well.
I think because probably most people haven't seen this series. It's a very, very good series. And one of the reasons it's very good is not just because it taps into, without any effort, what America is, which is a country of immigrants, but that it doesn't minimize the sheer difficulty of becoming American. I mean, what you lose in becoming an American is that's the principal premise of the film. Unlike many other films on the same subject, which are telling you it's great to be an American. In that sense, the films are profoundly original, and they're not hard to watch at all, but they don't convey very comfortable messages, usually.
But I want to hasten to add, this film has a lot of humor in it. I mean, in fact, it's one of the things that immigrants who've seen the film really respond to in the film, is because there's a lot of laughter amidst all that, and it's the way, you know, it's the way people cope, but it's also, people are funny. I mean, there's a sequence in the Dominican baseball story where these guys are, you know, at the training camp, you know, and they go to a McDonald's, and there are these girls giving them the eye, and they're trying to decide if they're old enough to go have sex with them, and it's hilarious. They don't. They decide they're too young, and that they you know, that's going to ruin their baseball careers if they do. But there's just, you know, and in Israel's story, when you first meet Israel, he says, "I feel like I'm Eddie Murphy in Coming to America," and he is like Eddie Murphy. He's this sort of, you know, hugely enthusiastic guy. But one of the things you see, though, to get to your point, is that as the film goes on, some of all that spirit of hope that he had in coming to America
gets bashed out of him.
But he's still resilient by the end. He has his first child, and he's, you know, he wants now for his son what he's been unable to have. You know what I mean? And so, you know, it's complicated. But we had this great group of filmmakers, and the gods smiled on us in terms of story. I mean, there's a lot happens. You know, it's not. There's no experts. It's just stories. You know. And the BBC aired it. It was You aired it twice. You aired it on BBC Two.
On BBC Two and on BBC Four. And it was a great moment because all these slots were opening up on BBC Four, and people loved it. And it made me wish that someone would do a series like this about Britain.
You said that at the time.
I said at the time, you know, what does it actually mean to come to Britain now? Not in the 50s, not history, but now. And I don't mean to encourage people to treat immigrants better. Because that's not what Steve does anyway. He just looks at things and tells you this is a good thing to look at it. If you look, you'll learn. If you look, you'll see. But anyway, let's go on to The Interrupters. Okay. Should we just see a bit of that, or you want to talk with him?
Well, it's just, we follow, for those that haven't seen it, we follow these people that work for an organization in Chicago that are mediating violence in the streets. And they are all people, they're called violence interrupters. That's where the title came from. And they're all people who used to be convicts or gangbangers or, you know, worse. And now they do this work, and they're particularly skilled because of who they are and the reputations they have. They're particularly skilled at being able to reach people in moments of crisis. So I think the first scene, we followed them for a year. You learn their individual stories as well as you get hopefully caught up in stories of people they're involved with and in helping. And the first one we're going to watch is from Amina, who is the daughter of a legendary gangbanger named Jeff Fort, probably one of the biggest, most significant gang leaders in the history of American crime. And she's his daughter, but she's now a practicing Muslim, and but she does this work. So this is a scene with her.
Salam, love. Don't do it no more. Bust your jaw. A family is really my real job. Out there in the community is a piece of cake for me. My husband worries about me more than anyone else. We've had different conversations about how dangerous the job is, and I don't see it.
I'm always worried about her because there are times that I can't be there physically with her, but I know that she is fearless and she will lay it on the line, and she'll go up against a lion. Oh. She will just stand up for anyone because of experiences she's had growing up where someone didn't stand up for her.
Our mosque is holding a prayer visual for a kid shot sitting in front of his home just listening to the radio. Corey definitely wasn't in a gang, and he was loved by his block. When rage sets in, when ego sets in, when a Hennessy sets in, I'm gonna walk down here to where Corey's friends are. You stay right here. These young guys say, let's go get who we think did it. I'm hearing 20 different things why that brother got changed. And all of it is stupid. All of it is stupid. 2 o'clock in the afternoon when these babies coming home from school, y'all shooting. For real? This is unacceptable for me to be holding this boy, this young man's obituary. Schools, churches, your mama's house, your cars, those are safe zones. And when I was about your age, I was making some real stupid decisions and some stupid calls that was causing me, my life, blood on my hands and my head. Stop. Who does this baby belong to? Who does this little shorty belong to? He just hanging around y'all? He just he just hanging around y'all, right? So he see everything that you all do, right? So if this brother right here catch a case and do 100 years, whose fault is it? It's his fault? Teach him righteous. Y'all got it? Yeah. Y'all got it? Yeah. You got it? Yeah. All right. I'm looking to you. Give me my number. Give me a call, all right?
All right.
That's us. I'm running it.
I will.
All right.
Well, I think the film is a classic. I think it's a more important depiction of American life than, say, The Wire, though it's unfair to make comparisons of that kind, I guess, between fiction and non-fiction. But tell us about Amina, but can you tell us first, this, whether you've seen the film or not, I just think it is an extraordinarily full depiction, not just of a crisis of teenagers being killed, but a whole neighborhood, a whole bit of American life. And the deeper you get into the film, the more you know about all that. But how did you get into the scheme, and how did you get to meet her, and were you aware again of the scale of the project when you started it?
Well, my partner on the film is a really terrific writer named Alex Kolowitz. He wrote this great book called There Are No Children Here. He's written other books, really fine books, but that's the one he's most known for. He had done this article for the New York Times Magazine, and we had been wanting to do a film together. And I think that, and I called him up after I read the piece and said, I think this would be great to do as a documentary. And he agreed. He worried about access, and I said, well, let's just see. Let's investigate that. And because he had done this article and been reporting this article for 6 months, in the course of doing it, it was a cover story for the magazine. He had made some great inroads and connections, and so that really helped us get in pretty quickly. And then we just started meeting with some of the interrupters, including Amina was one of them, and just sort of exploring with them, if we did this film, do you think you could actually, we could get some of these mediations in the street without compromising the work you're doing? And there was a feeling that there would be some we could do and some we couldn't. It was not easy, but we knew we didn't need a ton of them, because we weren't doing reality TV. We were trying to do something more than that. And Amina was certainly somebody we identified very early, like, we want to follow you.
I mean, in the film, you tell the backstory. I mean, some of the most remarkable bits of the film, when you give us the biographies of these people involved. Tell us a bit about her, who she is, and how she got to be married with that guy with that wonderful hat on. I mean, the hats are gorgeous in the film, by the way. It makes you, it's wonderful. Well, everyone should be forced to wear hats and dress up in clothes like that. Anyway, so how do you? What has she done? Yeah.
Well, she, as I said earlier, she was the daughter of Jeff Fort. But what's interesting about her is, you could just do a whole film on her. Yeah. I mean, this could have been a miniseries itself, but it just didn't work out that way. But she grew up estranged from her father. He had her when she was 16 by a woman who he did not end up, being with. And so she was kind of estranged from him and his family, and was raised by her grandmother on her mother's side. And her mother was, running the streets. So Amina, suffered sexual abuse as a child. She had it tough, not from the grandmother, but from a boyfriend of her mother. And she kind of carved out her own criminal life, which was what was fascinating to me, is she didn't work for her dad or wasn't in her dad's gang. She did her own thing. It was almost like in defiance of him. That she kind of carved her own path, and she was an enforcer for a drug ring, and you can see the enforcer in her, in the film, and in her personality. She's a force of nature, and so, but she eventually found her way out of that through faith, converting to Islam, and her father actually was part of making that happen, because he had converted.
I get a lot of comfort remembering the film when I have to read in our fucking papers another thing about the House of Windsor, and you get a biographer talking about some minor royal at Great Lengths, or Prince Philip, etc. And what I really like about this film is that that's what you get. You get to know these people's lives really. They have lives as complex, by the way, as the Battenbergs or whatever. They have antecedents. They have a culture. It's a toxic culture. They're trying to change the culture, and you tell us the backstory very well, but you also seize on the drama of it. I mean, yes. That's another question. The scene after scene after scene has a kind of richness and drama. Where was it difficult to find that, or did that just come flowing out as it does in the film?
Well, I think with virtually every documentary I've done, it just gets better and better the more you film. It just gets better and better. I mean, it's not to say good things don't happen early. They do, and if it's good, they do, because you might give up otherwise. But it just gets better and better. The more time you're there, the longer you're there. The interviews get better. You know, we do major sit-down interviews with subjects early on, and then we do at least 1 or 2 more later in the process. And no matter how good you think that first interview is, it gets better. And the same with access. We spent a lot of time in Englewood, which allowed us to get that kind of access. And the more comfortable our subjects became with us, the better it got. But, you know, I think the real challenge of this film was structural. And because there's no single narrative through, we're not following Arthur and his family and William and his family. We're not following Stevie and what's going to happen to him. We're following these interrupters doing their job, and so the structure of the film is you at different intervals you get backstory of who they were and how they came to do what they do, but the other through line is seeing them interact with people and interrupt lives, and each of those stories have various chapters to them. So structurally it was a really interesting editing challenge, but it was exciting. I mean, it was fun because it's really more structured like dramatic television.
You didn't edit this, though?
I did edit
Oh, you
this.
did? The whole film?
Yeah, well, I had a co-editor that helped me with it. But yes.
How many hours of footage, roughly?
We shot, this is interesting, we shot over 300 hours on this in 14 months. I mean, we were out, it became a joke at the production company. It's like, where's Steve? They're out shooting, of course. You know, I mean, we were, and of those 14 months, what's in the movie, you know, I mean, a lot of the strongest stuff was shot in the last, 4 or 5 months. I mean, it just really was, it just, got better.
Okay, by this stage, you switched to smaller cameras. Are you using more than one camera at once? Or?
No, one camera. And I shot this film. I don't normally shoot, but...
So you shot the whole thing, edited the whole thing, basically?
Yeah. Well, I didn't have a co-editor on it, but...
We'll go to the next thing. What, roughly, budget, terrible budget, medium budget, good budget?
We pitched at IDFA in 2008, and we're successful in getting a sizable commitment, including you guys came on in the aftermath of that. Sure. And so we ended up, we needed to get one more major grant, which we got late in the filming process, probably like 6-7 months ago. The film premiered at Sundance in January, so, or no, about a year ago we got the final, MacArthur came in. Yeah. So the budget for this film was, about $850,000.
Well, actually, that's not a lot of money for that amount of work, is it?
No, I'm not getting rich, but I'm getting to make films.
Let's go on to the next clip. It's one of my favorite characters, Eddie.
Eddie. So Eddie is we followed 3 interrupters. So Eddie is the interrupter that, what we loved about his story wasn't so much seeing him in the streets mediating, because it was hard to mediate with him, because in the neighborhood where he did a lot of work, we found out early on that the gang leaders in that neighborhood did not want us filming him doing that work. And he tried to convince them, and they were not going to hear it. I said, can I go talk to him? And he said, no, you can't go talk to him. And that was fine for us, because we felt like Eddie's story, as much as anything in the film, was his story, because this is a guy that went to prison for 14 years. He was a gangbanger who killed someone in a retaliation himself, and served 14 years. And so he's a guy that's still, as you see in the film, wrestling with his own sense of guilt and remorse over that, and his work is fueled by that. And so that's what this, I think this gets at that some, but he also discovered art in prison. You learned it in the scene. So he's a very sensitive soul guy. So.
Do you guys remember where we left off last week? We're working on our what? Backgrounds, right? It's about using a brush. Crisscrosses, C's. Last year, I had a hard time going to schools. I was like, hey, look, I work for the violence prevention program, and a lot of them didn't want to acknowledge that there was issues in their schools.
I used a pencil to sketch it out, and I shaded the background.
The amnesty contacted the ceasefire
They were actually focusing at the school about violence and how they could help the community and so forth. And I was like, hey, what do you think about the idea of maybe introducing like art for them to express themselves about violence?
Now this one right here, I kind of really like this one.
And when I was in prison, painting was my form of dealing with my issues and my problems and really discovering myself.
You got this angel, he's in hell. And then behind him is like some demons taunting him.
Art is kind of a way to hook the kids about, you know, what's going on in their community and what they're thinking about.
What's the one thing in your neighborhood that you wish people could focus on more to help out?
Spray painting.
Spray painting. What about you?
The shootings.
The shootings?
Because my mom's scared that there's going to be a shooting going on me while I'm outside. I would want them to help with the shooting because that really bothers me.
Why does it bother you?
Because there was this one time when our neighbors got into a fight, and I don't know what else happened, but somebody started shooting. And it really bothered me.
And what you're doing right here, being part of this program, that's a great thing. Because it shows that you cared and you want to do something about it.
And I just wish that these kids, if they ever go through that, it doesn't affect them the same way it affected me. My coping mechanism is keep going, keep going, keep going, keep working.
That's great. Yeah, that's astonishing. I mean, what you just get in the classroom and that sort of... How much did you have to film in the classroom to get that particular...
It just all happened that day.
Right.
We were there with them.
Yeah, that's great.
I think that, I don't know, things just happen. I mean, when we went there for the class, we didn't expect that to happen. We just thought we were going to show this one aspect of Eddie's life, that he was doing this class, and we thought that's interesting. Let's just go film that. We, of course, didn't expect any of that, and that's what I mean when I say that, you know, the most amazing things are the things you just don't expect. You go in imagining it's going to be one way, and then it's completely different, and usually in a way that's much more interesting and much more revealing than what you thought. You know.
Yeah. Well, let's come on to the next one. Is Kobe and Flamo. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Or I don't know how much time we have, but do we want to give questions to the audience?
We've got 20 minutes. Should we just get through this?
Okay,
one?
sure,
Okay.
sure. So Kobe's the third interrupter, and Flamo is, I think, one of the more memorable characters in the movie. If you've seen it, yeah, there's some nods going on. That's good. So for those of you who have seen the film, you'll get to see Flamo's grand entrance into the film. But this is one of those mediations where we felt like we were really right there for something really, you know, vivid, let's just say.
He left me a voicemail.
What up, Dad? I got some important news to talk to you about.
I got a call from a guy I met in jail. He said this guy sent the police into the house, somebody he was doing illegal things.
Call me back.
Say the police kicked his door in, locked up his brother, they threw handcuffs on his mother. And he talking about he knew who had sent the police in this house. He was looking for him.
Hey, bang your bitch ass yesterday, nigga. Man, fuck that pussy ass nigga.
What's up, what's up, what's up? My man Flamo make you laugh. But if you fuck with him, you gotta bring it on.
These motherfuckers came here, man. Had my motherfucking mama handcuffed, my little brother handcuffed and shit, man. Took my little brother, one got shot. The fucking wheelchair, man. Took him to jail.
But still, though, man, you got to try to leave that shit alone, though,
I ain't
man.
leaving shit alone till I get these motherfuckers. You already know how I get in.
I mean, but that shit ain't gonna make no...
Boy, it's gonna make it better for me.
I'm sorry to hear about your brother, but still, though, they don't make shit no better. My phone. They ain't gonna make shit no better, though.
Fuck making it better. I'm walking around my fucking pistol. Can you grab my phone, brother? I can't, you know.
Man, you crazy, man, be out here like that.
It's love and everything, but I ain't feeling that, none of this shit. And I respect y'all, you know what I'm saying, what you're doing and everything, that's cool. But fuck that.
So how much your brother bond?
4,000.
So as me and Rodney got up with the other side and sat down with him, says they was willing to get the money back, would you leave it alone then?
Nah, I'm not with ceasefire. What was y'all letting these motherfuckers came kicking my door in?
What I'm saying is we can't erase what already happened, but the whole thing is you got to look at it like, man.
You can't erase what happened. You right. And you can't predict what the fuck I'm finna do. Shit.
You know, we just trying to work shit out.
You options and solutions to the problem.
Man, fuck this shit. Fuck a problem. Fuck a solution. These motherfuckers trying to take my shit. You ain't just cross me, you cross my fucking mama. But my mama, nigga, I come in your crib and kill every motherfucker body.
Two of your brothers gone. If you be gone, they ain't gonna do nothing but hurt your mama.
She'll be all right.
How many kids you got?
I'm claiming 4.
All right, but I'm just saying, so if you go to jail, who will take care of your kids?
That's the thing. God taking care of us now. He gonna take care of them. Just like when I do what I'm gonna do, he gonna take care of me too.
But you was locked up before for the same shit, though.
Man, I'm 32 years old. I've been locked up 15 years in my life. What that mean? What the fuck that mean? That's where I grew up at. God damn it, ain't no shame, ain't no secret. Shit. I'm tired of being out here any motherfucker way. It's bored as hell out here. Soft-ass niggas out here ain't doing shit but tricking. That ain't the police, sis. What's that on the corner? I know these punk-ass police still want me. Motherfuckers gonna have to kill me.
Man, that shit crazy, man.
How can you help me? Right now. How can you help me?
I mean, the only thing, like I say, the only thing I could do is try to get to know you more, spend a little time with you, and try to work with you.
So that means you will take me out to dinner then? We can go to lunch right now, and we can sit down and we can talk about this motherfucking problem. That's what you telling me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'ma hold you to that goddamn shit.
Yeah, we could go out. If that's what you want to do.
When?
We could go out now.
Right now?
Yeah.
Let me go put my pistol up.
Okay. Should we get some questions now? Yeah?
He's going to get his own reality show.
Did you ever feel in danger when you were filming, and did you ever have to kind of pull out because you were afraid in the situation you were in? No,
I never did feel in danger, and I think that was in large measure because the interrupters have such respect and authority in those situations, and we're with them, that I mean, maybe I was a little naive, or I think there's something, you know, since I don't shoot a lot myself, I think there's something about being behind that camera you think you're protected too. You know, like you got this thing in front of you or something. But I never really felt really threatened. Like I said earlier with Eddie, you know, we had filmed something in a neighborhood where he was talking to the guy that he had retaliated on that was in a wheelchair, that he ended up killing the guy that had shot his friend. After that, the gang guy said, "Don't come back." And so we weren't foolish about it, and it would have put Eddie in an impossible situation, so we would never have dreamed of it. But I'm not some, you know, I look at films like Restrepo, and, you know, I mean, that's brave filmmaking. I mean, what I did was, you know, I mean, it's not, I can't compare. That's the way I feel.
Okay, there.
Hi. Amazing film, just fantastic. I'm very impressed. You say that you don't shoot a lot, and also that you did shoot it all by yourself. You get incredible coverage, and especially in the more emotional moments, you're able to capture, it seems, all of the reactions from the people, you know, in that situation. How do you do that? What's your technique for managing that?
Well, I think it's helped that I've edited all my films, starting with Hoop Dreams. I mean, I haven't been the only editor on all of them, but I have, you know, been an actual editor, like, you know, alone in the room with the material, which I love. And I think editing is a great training ground, even if you're just editing especially if you edit your own films. And, you know, and in this case, I'd love to ream whoever shot the films when I didn't shoot them. I mean, a lot of times it's good-natured, sometimes it's not. You know, I mean, in the edit room, I'll be like, I can't believe they didn't get a cutaway of, you know. Now, on this film, it was like, I can't wait, I didn't get the cutaway. But you know, it's I'm always, I think a key to it is so it helps that, but I'm always interested in the person that's not talking in scenes. a lot of times I'm more interested in the person not talking than the person talking. And I find that when I work with people who shoot, you know, which I do most often, that's the thing I have to lean on them the most about, is to pull them away from the speaker, to get how people are reacting to them. And if you look at this film, I mean, you kind of picked it up, but if you look at this film with that in mind, you'll see that a lot of the more potent scenes in the movie take place in cutaways, really. I mean, and they're not cutaways as in, okay, that was great, now everyone stand here and let me just get some shots of you listening. Those cutaways are worthless. You know, the cutaways that work are the ones that you get in the moment where people are really reacting. And
what proportion of cutaways in your films are like that? I mean, do you use the cutaways that you don't like also? I mean, do you film people listening afterwards and then...
I've, you know, rarely done that. The couple of times I've done that that spring to mind, it's actually the scene has just gone on.
Okay.
Sometimes that will happen, like a scene will happen so quickly. It happened on Hoop Dreams once. The scene happened so quickly that and Peter had a tendency to shoot the person that's, well, that was the thing I always had to do with Peter. Peter's over here, you know. He hadn't gotten it yet, and so I just said, you know what, before everybody leaves, let me just get some shots of you listening for a second. And then they actually went on to actually have the real scene, because the nervousness that they had about the camera, it wasn't the family that was nervous, it was the scene in Hoop Dreams, if you remember it, where the family goes back to try to work out the finances for Arthur. Mm-hmm. And they're making the family pay like, you know, $2,000 before they're going to release his transcripts, and they're going back to ask him to work out a deal where they'll make payments to get the transcript. It's like an awful scene, right? I mean, when people watched it in the movie theater, when the movie came out, people hissed during it. But it happened so quickly because the administrator guy, was very nervous about the whole thing. And so it just happened really quick. And then by me saying, actually very innocently, it wasn't, I wish I could say it was that calculated. I just said, wait, hold on, let me just get some shots of you listening for a second. Then they actually went on to really talk about Arthur in a way they would have talked about him had we not had the camera there, and it was the most revealing part of the scene. So both parts were in there, but that was the part that kind of made it resonate.
Okay, another question? Yes.
When do you decide that you're finished shooting on a particular film, and when do you start editing?
Well, different films, different times. I mean, I think you're always looking for natural places to end the film or a story within a film that you think will be satisfying as a film. Obviously, people's lives go on, and really interesting stuff happens after that. And sometimes in editing, you go out and get that, right? But you know, you're always looking for a certain kind of closure dramatically. So, like in Hoop Dreams, the kids going off to college, even though we went and filmed them in college after that because we just couldn't resist, and we got some great stuff, but when we kind of knew in the back of our minds that really them leaving for college was it, and the stuff in college got used for an epilogue, very brief epilogue. With Stevie, it was him going off to prison. I mean, that's the difference between those two films in many ways. With this film, it was trickier because we're not following the interrupters' lives in that way. We're really more following their work and learning about their life. And so it was trying to find closure for the stories that they were dealing with. Or again, not closure in that, you know, touchy-feely way, but dramatically. And so I think that's, and then in terms of the editing, you know, the way I like to work now is like on this film, while I was shooting, I brought in an editor, and it's a guy that I've worked with. He started with me in a very lowly capacity, and he worked his way up he's done like 5 films with me now, and now he's an editor. And so he would start cutting scenes of stuff we had shot. And a lot of what he was doing, frankly, was cutting scenes to make demos to try to raise additional money with, right? Because that's a lot of it. So, or for grant proposals and such. And so, but he would cut scenes. I would look at the scenes, comment on them. He would do some more work on them, all while we're filming, and then move on to other stuff, you know. And then when I finish filming, then I get in the edit room, and what I do is I start at the beginning and start to cut the movie. A cut of the movie, and when I get the scenes he's done, I have them, I put them in, I adapt them to the flow of the movie. And when I get to scenes he hasn't done, I cut them. And I keep him ahead of me. So I'm like, you go cut this and that, because I'll be getting to that in a couple of weeks. And so so I look at his stuff. And then, of course, in this film, because there were so many kind of like really cool scenes to cut, he was like, I want to cut, the flame, I want to cut Little Mikey in the barber shop. And I was like, no, I'm cutting Little Mikey in the barber shop. He got to cut that Flamo scene. So I was very generous. I really wanted to cut that scene.
Another question? Anyone? Good. Right at the back.
Oh, wow, way up there.
Hi, sorry, you probably can't see me. Just a question about the decision to film The Interrupters, just to self-shoot it. Was it literally just you and a camera, or did you go with someone else as well? Or?
There were three of us primarily. Alex Kotlowitz, partner who was producer on it, myself and Zach Piper, co-producer and sound person. But Zach and I are the crew, and Alex wasn't always there. And when he was there, if something was really going on, he would move out of the way and move at a safe, not safe in that way, but not be in people's eye line and all that. So it from a filming standpoint, it was essentially two of us, Zach and myself. And I never go more than three. I mean, if I'm not shooting, it's usually me, a camera person, and a sound person. And depending on the camera person or the situation, I'm either kind of next to the cameraman and sort of in his ear to whisper if there's things I want, or again, depending on the camera person and the situation, sometimes I'll just move, where I can hear everything, but not, just be standing there. But I never do more than three people.
Over there.
Hello. Thank you for making your films. Quick question. What's next for The Interrupters, and what's next for you?
For the film?
For the people, the actual Interrupters.
The actual Interrupters.
And what are you doing next?
Well, they're still working for Ceasefire, doing their work. Eddie's graduating college. He's, he's going places. He wants to go to grad school, and, he's got big ideas. He won't be with Ceasefire much longer. Kobe got a promotion to be, he now does training, and it causes him to travel some because they go and help in other cities, so he travels to other cities and does trainings. Amina's still doing her thing. I mean, I was talking to her the other day, and I was trying to talk to her about something. She said, she texted me, she said, I'll call you. I'm dealing with some shit right now. So then when I called her, she was like, yeah, I was at the Jewel, and I hear this woman, she was just going off on an employee. And I turned around, and she's like 6'1", and she was in their face, and she was about to get violent with them. It was over her daughter who worked at that Jewel. And she was just, and she said, so I went up to her and I said, I can relate. I have children. Somebody mistreats my children, I'd be the same way. And she basically talked her out. She said the woman was so upset that she literally peed her pants. She was so angry and ready to, and she said she was 6'1". And so she got her out of the Jewel. She talked her down. She walked her to her car. The woman was so thankful, and she wanted to hug Amina. Amina was like, the cops were arriving. She said, you need to leave. But she insisted on hugging Amina before she, this is Amina's life. I mean, every time I turn around, it's like, and then she went back in the store, and the Jewel employee, the manager said, I can't believe what you just did. Who are you? And she explained that, this is kind of what she does. So.
More question? Yeah. And then afterwards.
Would have loved to have that scene.
Touched on this a little bit already. I was just wondering, do you find these projects, or do they find you?
Well, some films are brought to me. Most I find in some fashion. I mean, Real Paradise is a documentary I did that was brought to me by the subjects, actually, and I wish they liked the movie I made more. And I produced and edited a film called The War Tapes that was brought to me that I was very excited to do. I rarely do that. I've only done it once, actually. But like this is a film that was brought to me in the sense that Alex, my friend, wrote the article, but I then, called him up and said, hey, let's do a film. And that was true with Stevie and Hoop Dreams and most of the others. But it's both.
Okay, over there. Wait a minute, I get you the microphone.
It's me again. Do you have any regrets with this film, or any no regrets? Is there anything that you never caught that you wanted to catch for the start?
Yeah, I have constant regrets. Yeah, no, I mean, every film, I go through a process at the end of it where I just second guess after they're done, like not everything, but I second guess a lot of stuff. And it's like, yeah, I thought about, we could have done that, and I didn't do that, and whatever, I mean, I think that just goes with the territory. I look at Hoop Dreams today and go, God, there was that great sequence we should have put in there, why did I leave that out? And then I look at films and go, why is it, so I believe it or not, I look at some of them and go, boy, I should have made that scene shorter,
Anyone else? Yeah, right at the back.
Hi, how do you do with sound? Because that sound booms and things are always so intrusive. So I wonder, how can you, try to, because the camera sometimes you get accepted, but that big boom and everything is
right.
Really...
Yeah, you have to have a good sound person that's sensitive to that. So a good sound person will, well, first of all, we put a wireless mic on our principal, like our interrupter. So when we do that first thing in the day. So we go out with them, we put a wireless mic on him so that we don't have to worry about him. And then when we encounter situations, it's really, that's where a sound person has to be sensitive to it, that sometimes booming from above will work. Sometimes you realize that's being distracting, so you come from below, or you come from the side and you just suffer with a little worse sound. The scene we saw with Eddie, with the little girl, crying about the violence, sound guy was very smart with that, and kind of a lot of times that you want the sound person to stay out of your line of sight completely. You don't want them too close to where you're filming because you might catch them, like not just the mic but them. But he, but he was in a perfect spot for her because she couldn't see him. She was behind. She's here, sort of facing Eddie, who's here. And the sound guy, who wasn't our usual guy on this one, it wasn't Zach, he wasn't available that day, but a very experienced guy. He was back in the corner over here, and he was very long on the pole, and it came from back here over. So she wasn't even, she was speaking so quietly, and he got it.
Any more questions?
There's one there.
Yes.
I was listening to an interview on Radio 4 last night, and you were talking about how Hoop Dreams and The Interrupters almost formed bookend. Mm-hmm. I just wondered how Chicago had been transformed in the period from Hoop Dreams to your filming of this film.
Yeah, good question. First of all, the violence has gone down. Violence peaked. The number of murders in Chicago peaked in the 90s, around the time, early 90s, when we were filming Hoop Dreams. So the number of murders overall has gone down, which is great news. But it's still persistently high level, too high a level. So that's good. But the neighborhoods themselves, in many respects, have either not changed or they're worse because the whole housing crisis hit Chicago really badly. And so there's a lot of abandoned properties and boarded up homes. And Englewood, the community that we filmed quite a bit in, Englewood alone, the census figures just came out, Englewood alone, this one neighborhood lost over 20,000 residents in 10 years. And they didn't all go to better homes in the suburbs. They left because it wasn't working. I'm sure some went out for good reasons, but it's really, it's been devastating, this current economic climate.
All right. Any more questions, anyone? Or what? Yeah? What is this 3-minute film?
Yeah, you want to watch one 3-minute film?
Yeah.
Start to finish, the whole thing?
Absolutely.
This is a film I did, thanks for remembering. This is a film I did for this interesting group called Cinelon. It's an interesting idea. They're a fledgling operation to try and create short films for the internet. And they went out to a lot of filmmakers, but you can also, it's like CINELAN. They also take submissions, and they've built this pretty significant library of films now. But this was, they came to me and asked me if I wanted to do a few, and I was like, yes, I can do a short film. And and of course mine is 3 minutes and 8 seconds because I never come in right on time, right, Nick? So this is the one of the ones. I did 3 altogether, but this is one of the ones I did. This is my favorite of the 3. And so here it is. And for me, it's like, I want to do a funny film. I mean, my films have humor in them, you know, but I want to do it just like a funny film. Real Paradise was as close as I got, but it didn't end up being as funny as I wanted it to be because the reality wasn't as funny as I wanted it to be. But anyway, I like this film because it's funny, or at least to me. So, see what you think.
Most people know me as the artist. They never knew my name. For about 15 years, I painted murals on people's walls of Robert Teller's homes. The projects were about 2 miles long. You know, it kind of helped me when they tore the projects down. The customers, they all called me back to do the same work again that I did in their apartment before. This lady had me, believe it or not, I painted every room in her house. Even the hallways, the washroom.
Now, so many people got different ideas about this picture, okay? Whichever way you want it to be, that's the way it is in your head. They just having a nice time. This is the paradise. My mother and father both passed away. And this is the place I would love them to be.
People did love landscapes. Just make them feel like they're in a place where they're not at the Robert Tellers. They wanted blue skies and then clouds. But tying the projects down is something they should have did a long time ago, because we were steady killing each other. I had some people say, just put me a graveyard on the wall, like this. I can remember doing 8 on one side and about 7 on the other side, tombstone. Would make me sorry, sad sometimes. All them people that they knew. They tried to come up with new ideas. It was this lady in a project. She told me, just imagine that there's a hole in my wall, what you will see behind there. I drew the bricks in like it was broke out. Okay, like the bricks was broke off, like a bomb just came through and blew this out. And on the wall right here, you can see the nice Sears Tower. Behind all that is clouds in the sky and everything. I loved it. She had paid me $70, came to me with food, alcohol. She sat back on the couch relaxing and listening to her music. And when I finished it, she gave me $70 more. And then she said, I want you to come back tomorrow. The next day, she said, now I want you to draw right here. I want you to draw me doing like this, with my hand like this. Standing right here like that with my hand like that. I said, oh, she wanted me to make it look like she pushed a hole in the wall or something like that. She said, come back the next day and I'll pay you more money. I want you to draw a man like he falling out like that. She want a picture of her pushing her husband out the window. God, she must have hated that man or hers. She ready to make him out of ex-husband. Once I had work shown in a little show that let me know that my work was really good. Somebody stole my paint. I said, oh, my work must be really valuable.
I guess that was a precursor to the Interrupters, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Steve. Thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick.